Yeah, exactly.
So our next category is character of the year. This was brand new last year. Our only winners so far, 2021, Ford Cruller from Psychonauts 2. The nominees for 2022 are The Bucket from Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, Blaidd from Elden Ring, Odin, God of War Ragnarok, Marissa Marcel, Immortality, LeBlanc from Norco, Iron Fist Alexander, Elden Ring, Lemon Mina from Citizen Sleeper, Plimbo from Cult of the Lamb, Death in Card Shark, and Ethan from Citizen Sleeper. Going first this time, we have Garrett.
Ooh. I think I'm gonna take off the pot. I'm gonna go straight for an Elden Ring character. Iron Fist Alexander from Elden Ring, who is like, I really appreciate him as a character.
Funny. Yes,
but he's a talking pot, and that's why he's funny. But is he the best character in
video
games in 2022?
Now, there's two vessels on here that transport things.
Yes,
in best characters. That is an indictment on 2022's gaming characters.
Or it's an indication that we should introduce best vessel.
Oh, okay.
Next year, yeah,
that's true.
I'm fully impressed. I can't wait to argue for 45 minutes about best vessel 2022.
You gotta smack him on the bum to get him out of his little hole. It's great.
It's a lovely little bit. You find him in a field, and you're like, it's a pot. Oh wait, no, the pot can talk, and you boot the pot out of his hole, and you're like, it's a nice little bit.
I think it's a cool thing for, like, again, somebody who, just because this is one of the, like, I was one of the people that voted for this. I think it's like, of the two Elden Ring characters, happy to see him go first, definitely. But I think he's great because it's like, you know, those early hours before you get over we have to patent that hump, that wall you described with From
the wall, the Miley Cyrus climb, some might say.
Yes. Before you get over the climb, you are kind of like constantly tense, constantly anxious, constantly assuming the ground is about to open up and kill you. And when you come up upon this pot, you're just like, oh fuck, like what the fuck is gonna happen here? And just that little injection early on in the game of absolute silliness is a real tonic for it. Just to go, oh, okay.
It is a little bit Shakespearean comic relief, like the gatekeeper in Macbeth.
Do you know what? Funny enough, because he's a clay pot, it very much reminded me of
Death's Door.
No, in the Harley Quinn animated series, Clayface,
like,
where he's an absolute ham. That's what he's like. Yeah,
no, it's great, and because everything else up to that point is doing the usual Souls thing of I was the Lord of Shit back in the kingdom before it fell, and it's just like, right, God, everyone fucking stinks. This fucking zombie world fucking sucks. I hate it here. And then it's like, oh look, there's a jolly little pot. He's great, but yeah.
Okay, I'm next. I gotta go for one that's from a game I quite liked, and I think it took me the longest of all of us to kind of burn out on it. So I'm gonna go Plimbo from Cult of the Lamb.
That would have been my second choice there.
Which one is Plimbo? I don't remember who Plimbo was.
That was my exact reaction. I had nowhere. I finished this game and I was like, "Who's Plimbo?"
Plimbo is the one that does the mother-in-law jokes at the fisherman's bit, where because the thing about Cult of the Lamb is it does have a surprising amount of humor to it. For what is quite a dark game, shall we say, in some ways. But you know, the window dressing of the kind of adorable presentation, it's, you know, there's this interesting juxtaposition. But yeah, you go to the docks, and Plimbo has, I can't remember what the hell the name of any of the trinkets in that game is, but he starts chatting to you, and he's like, oh look, see these creatures, you've seen them all around there, yeah, they've stood in silent judgment for a millennia, just like my mother-in-law. And it's basically that. He just does a bunch of mother-in-law jokes.
Does proper like cruise ship comedian bits. Like
it's like, I think it's similar in some ways to the part you just mentioned in Elden Ring, where like a lot of the characters in Cult of the Lamb talk in that kind of I don't know, kind of like Middle Earth mystique sort of language, and then you've just got this fucking sailor doing mother-in-law jokes, and it's a nice little kind of brief respite from what the rest of that game is. But it's not character of the year, no. But I thought you look up and down, because I remember when Cult of the Lamb came out, and Dave, you was, you know, bigging up big time, and that was before, you know, any of us realized that the game does kind of fall off a cliff.
Yeah, doesn't stick the landing at all.
And like, you know, and I think Cult of the Lamb across the board this year, like in the kind of general public, has done really well, and is one of those games that you see quite a lot of. I would say it's kind of crossed over into like the mainstream or whatever kind of sphere, like say like Untitled Goose Game did, but it is like the kind of indie game of that size that has made that kind of like impression. I think Cult of the Lamb
it's appearing in a lot
game.
of top 10s this year.
Absolutely, yeah. And I wouldn't agree with it, but I do think that I can see why it is in there as well. And I look at obviously like our Game of the Year form, and it's not really shown up anywhere. So I think there was a little bit of like, I wanted to give it a shout out somewhere, because I don't think it deserves to be anywhere else. I think it does have too many problems. It does not know how to stick the landing. It's janky as fuck on the Switch.
It's very janky.
And other platforms. But yeah, I like Plimbo. He's a good laugh.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Mark. Up next we have Jack. Actually, sorry. No, that wasn't Mark did the promo, but it wasn't Mark's cut. It's now Mark's cut.
Oh,
because it was me that cut Plimbo, but you just talked for so long about it, we all forgot.
I think of the two here, and I believe this will be a conversation for me and Barry, I would say that I prefer Lemon Mina. I think that character arc and how that plays out is much more impactful, meaningful than Ethan. I would say of the two, I would take off Ethan, though I do think that his story arc and like the kind of the panic that his character brings to that game that isn't there up until that point does bring like a different tension that you don't experience in Citizen Sleeper up until that point. And I think he's effective in that role, but I do think that just for reasons that we'll get onto in a bit, I prefer Lemon Mina out of those two.
Yeah, Lemon Mina are I mean, they're a potential ending. You can get an ending based on your attachment to those characters. Ethan is he's a fantastic secondary character for anyone who hasn't played it. Ethan's like a shithead bounty hunter who's like on top of your already shitty life as like a cyborg on this rotting space station that, you know, desperately needs money to keep yourself alive. He's like harassing you and stalking you and threatening to take you back to the agency that's looking for you, and in exchange, rather than just doing it, he's like trying to extort you for like money to clear his bar tab and stuff. He's an outrageous shithead in a game full of shitheads. But what's interesting is kind of how that arc kind of changes, and you kind of realize he's obviously, as you might imagine from someone who's like using his power that way, he's like super pathetic in a way, and he's also kind of dodging trouble. And you can, without getting into the specifics of his, like, you can deactivate the tracker on your character that kind of takes away his power over you, and you can kind of just ignore him and his quest. You can kind of get an ending to his quest line that's kind of a non-ending by just not engaging with his bullshit anymore. And you can go back to the bar where you used to meet him, and the guy behind the bar is like, oh yeah, he came here and he was all distressed, but then he left and I don't know what happened. And I was looking it up after the fact, and there's way more dramatic kind of conclusions to that story, but I didn't engage with any of them because I was like, I fucking hate you. I'm going to figure out a way that I don't have to engage with your bullshit and I never have to see you again. And look, that's Citizen Sleeper to a T. It's like, it's decision-based storytelling that's motivated entirely by your interaction with the characters. It's if you hate kind of go down this path and you get a new gun, go down this path and you get a new piece of armor. If you hate that shit and you're like, no, I want to be compelled by two different directions at a character level, that is Citizen Sleeper. And I think I would agree. I would keep Lemon Mina of the Citizen Sleeper characters, but Ethan is great. His quest line is great, but I'd say he probably does not stick around amidst this competition.
Okay. So Ethan, I'm sorry, your time is up. Next up is Jack.
Oh boy. I was actually going to ask in that category which one of the two Citizen Sleepers
lost your easy way out.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I like of the two that I saw, I think Lemon Mina was also cool because Mina is just the most adorable little person.
Oh, we have things to say about that, don't you, right, Jack?
Good. Oh, this is hard now. I mean, tell me about Death and Card Shark, Mark.
So Death, to some degree, like Death, it's not even so much the character; it's like the mechanic behind it and around it. And this is another situation where Card Shark unfortunately was shafted in our across our categories because I was the only one that played it. But so the idea of Death, like when you play Card Shark, you have different scenarios where you are trying to cheat at cards, basically. But if you get caught that you're cheating, a number of different scenarios can happen. And one of them is that you could end up dead. And then what happens is instead of you automatically just starting the level again, you go into limbo and your character meets death. Now, for a bit of context, in Card Shark, your main character that you play is a mute. They can't speak at all. But when you are in limbo with Death, who he says himself is like, hey, I make the rules here, basically. Your character, your protagonist can talk during those moments, and he becomes a sassy little bitch, to be quite honest, and it's quite enjoyable to get that dynamic shift. And basically, like, to start with, the first time you meet him, Death is like, hey, I want something from you. And he's like, well, what do you want? He's like, I want time. And so your character's like, well, it's 11:57. It's like, no, I don't want time. That's just numbers. I want actual like time. It's like, well, I can't give you that. And he's like, And so your character's like, all right, what about if I'll barter my soul? We'll play a game of cards, and if I win, I go back up, and if I lose, you take my soul.
Like Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, where they play Death at like electronic football.
Pretty much like that, yeah. And so Death's like, yeah, fuck, I'm game on for that. But obviously, because the whole game is based around you cheating at cards, you can cheat at cards against Death using the techniques that you've learned. And like, there's a number of different scenarios you can encounter in terms of like the actual game that you play against Death and like how he interacts and responds. And there's a little bit of you that's playing it where you kind of think that Death knows that you're cheating and doesn't care, because like the game that you play there, it's far easier. Like the only mechanics that you use are way more simplified than the ones that you come across like in the game, which do get quite complex towards the end. But I think that he's just sort of there for the banter and appreciates that you've come down. And he's sort of, every time that you like that you win and you go back up, he's like, well, I'll be seeing you again soon anyway. And it's just it's a game where they've really thought about how to use Death as a mechanic, but also like a kind of not a story arc of sorts, but just to integrate some level of character, kind of in the way that like Hades sort of gives actual excuse and reason behind like why you actually have to start a run again, right. And among the many reasons that Hades was an incredible game. And so Card Shark does that sort of thing as well. I think it's more the mechanic behind Death and what you do there that I think I enjoy more than like Death as an actual character. But he does and like Card Shark has a number of really, really interesting characters. But I guess Death for me is like the most immediate one. Comte is probably the most obvious one, but I think that would be he would be a harder sell, but I think it's if you play the game that you would like see it, and I'm hoping Barry sticks with it. I think Card Shark is just a tremendous game, and I think they do a good job with this. It's not my character. There are stronger choices on here, but I think it's worth a shout. So
cool, yeah. Death to come off then, please, Dave.
Death to Death. Barry.
Okay. Just gotta rip the band-aid off here. The bucket is not a character, lads. It is an object. It's a thing you piss in when you're drunk.
Barry, the bucket has so much character.
More depth.
It has, frankly, all of the character, and that's the point of the bucket. Barry didn't get the bucket.
The bucket can be whatever you want it to be, Barry. So
I want it to be off this list. Can it be that?
If you do need a piss,
absolutely not.
You can.
No.
If you want it to be your companion,
it's not gag of the year. It's character. All right. I don't buy the bucket here.
One of our popular things that we always say to kind of cut through the chuff on these things is: does it hang? Is it going to end up number one?
It's got a handle, so yes.
Look, for God's sake, I love the bucket.
Very utilitarian.
I love Stanley Parable, but like.
Bucket's my number one, Dave. So don't you pretend no one feels strongly about the bucket.
In a game of charming bits, the bucket is a charming bit, and indeed,
that's the thing. You could make the argument that it could have just been a charming bit.
I am making that argument.
The original bit is that like, oh, we didn't do anything new in the sequel because you go through this whole area where like, here are all the ideas we have for this Stanley Parable sequel, and it's a bucket. And what if we just gave you a bucket? And if it was just that, if it was just we gave you a bucket, you walk through the game with a bucket, I'd agree with you that it's just a nice little bit. But that's not what they do. They take this bucket and make it a character in every single ending in the game. All of them. They've rewritten every single one of them so that they react differently to the bucket. And the bucket, because they personify it in all of those endings, is why it's a character. And the bucket is a commentary on characters. And there's all these different like fantastic bucket endings, like the game show Is It a Bucket ending, where it gets very existential about whether or not it's a bucket. And the one where you put the bucket in the escape pod and you put the little finger up to the lips of the bucket, it's like, don't talk, just escape. It's like the way they did so many different little characterizations of this bucket, this inanimate object.
Have you seen the one when the narrator falls madly in love with the bucket?
Yes, the love for the bucket.
He gets really jealous of Stanley, and then he realizes that he has to completely end the game just so he can be alone with the bucket because he's jealous of Stanley's new pal.
Yeah, look, I love all this stuff, and it's like great bits, as Barry was saying. But at the same time, like, does this end up as the consensus number one? I don't think it does. I think
it seems like Garrett and Jack are.
Look, what I will say is, hang on.
I'm a Stanley Parable Philistine. I got to preface the next 5 hours of podcasting. I got to say, I'm
in the words of Father Jack, I love this bucket.
Okay. We can leave the bucket. We can leave the bucket for now.
Like, I can absolutely hang on a little bit longer. But
there's a character I'm a bit more bullish on, but at the same time it could admit probably should go. Marissa Marcel. She's got it. She's a.
I'm here for this.
She's a good. Archetypal Hollywood once upon a time starlet. She's not an.
I assume when we say Marissa Marcel here, we're generally talking about the one rather than the actual actress.
It's because that's what again, like,
I suppose, what do you want to make
that like Marissa Marcel encompasses the actress Marissa Marcel and the 3 roles she plays in the individual films as well. I don't think there's on this list, at least, I don't think there's a deeper or better performed character on this. I think Manon Gage's performance in this game is a fucking knockout.
Did you not just hear about the bucket?
I think every little fucking glance, every little mannerism, everything, as much about her that isn't said as the stuff she is saying. Those moments where you jump into a clip in Immortality and you go, oh, I missed what she said there. And you go to rewind and you realize there was actually 30 seconds before they hit action. Yeah. And the little moments where she doesn't think she's being observed, and those things, and the little, like, that the hand camera footage as well of, them messing around the apartment, the little bits on the like the talk show and things like this, and the moments people are saying things to her and she just like dissociates, or there's a kind of like, there's a look in the eyes. And then, yes, when you layer in, you realize what the thing that's going on with the one is, that this immortal being that's almost like a vulture, that it lives forever by inhabiting the bodies of people who are near death, and that way it's able to sustain itself. So it takes on the role of Marissa Marcel, and it also, like, as part of its kind of possession or occupation of the body of Marissa Marcel, whatever you want to call it, takes on some weird mishmash of her memories and the one's memories. And this is part of why the clips are the way they are and the mechanics are the way they are, is that it's like a bleed of two minds in the same brain.
Right.
I think this is fucking unbelievable, and I think it's a fucking sin if this thing isn't in the top 2.
I will say, look, I was very compelled by Immortality. I loved Immortality. It was one of my most pleasant surprises of the year, one of the most unique games of the year. Yeah. I think your case is much more compelling than the bucket, but I got resistance on the bucket. Okay. And I would say this is one thing that's tough about music and best looking categories that we're now coming into on category is that you're talking about apples and oranges, because you're looking at like a fucking synthwave pixel art game versus like a 3D AAA game, and the soundtracks are so different. Now in characters, it's like this. It's like just an actress doing a phenomenal performance of a well written character versus the deconstruction of the concept of a character in a bucket. And it's now getting so hard to just like make it distinct. I'm Dave. I'm with you. If I'm being honest, I don't think she's winning. Is the reality of it?
For me, she would win by a fucking mile compared to everybody else, and
She'd
I think she should be. Well. She should at the minimum be final two.
Can I
minimum
say,
is
like when you reach the stage where you understand what's happening in this game and you see the character of the one a few times, I almost get frustrated with the rest of the game because I want her to be on screen at all times. Yeah, like I actively skip it. I don't give a shit about the movies at that stage, even though they're like brilliantly produced and all that. It's like, no, I just want to get to the next scene with that character and that performance.
Can I just say it was such a brave performance as well? Like you see her in like lots of different scenarios as like nudity and stuff, that things that like
violence,
violence, like things that you wouldn't have to think that you would see in a video game. And it's like you say, it's the moments between the scenes, the pauses.
And again, in the way you're like, it's so weird comparing this to the fucking bucket, but like the way you're talking about the way it's like a deconstruction or a commentary on like the Marissa Marcel as a character is a commentary on performance, as well as everything else, because it is this immortal being inhabiting this role of a person that it is like latched onto to stay alive, and the ways in which kind of like trauma is inflicted on Marissa Marcel / the one, and like all the sorts of intricacies and ambiguities that kind of blossom out from there. I think it's a fucking astonishingly well written character. It's a beautifully performed character. I don't think there is a better performance in video games this year. Strike me down if I'm lying.
Okay.
And Dave, just one thing to add to that as well. If she was bad, this whole game wouldn't work.
Falls apart.
She is the linchpin at the heart of this game.
And the central mystery of the game, the central like pull of the game is this one person. You know what I mean? And like you said, Barry, like you have given great evidence of that, because it's like as good and as fun and as authentic to the time period as like a lot of these movies are. You're just like, I just need to learn fucking more about her. Right. What the fuck is going on here? And like even the little bits of stuff, because as well, what's great about the little tiny details, like I said, whether it's a glance or anything like that, but even things like about 2 hours into the game, when I'm starting to see the one stuff and I'm starting to think like, what the fuck is what is going on? And then I'm just like, I'm looking at the dates on the film reels and I'm going, these movies are 21 years apart and she doesn't age a day.
Right.
Yeah.
And, like just stuff like that. Whereas like the closer you pay it, and this is what great characterization is in games, the closer you pay attention to her, the closer you analyze everything, the more there is. It's much like a bucket. It is fathomless and deep. Like it's incredible. It is it's transcend the medium level performance.
I will say like, and it's not just her character, it's every character in this game. I did get to a point with like not the performance, but just the characters as a whole. And I guess maybe it's my critique on the direction of the characters or whatever. I got to a point where I wanted him to just Far Cry 3 every single motherfucker in this game and just kill them all, because they were doing my head in. And I think that's partially down to my frustration with the mechanics of this game, compounded with like some of the performances. So everything you're saying is a very compelling case, and I think I'm more just venting about issues I have with the game, which are more relevant to Game of the Year. So I won't, like.
Can I say one of my favorite little bits that I didn't talk about enough when I was talking about Immortality on the podcast, or when we've been talking about it so far, is the like relationship between the one and the other one. Where like you get these beautiful speeches from the one about how fascinated they are with humanity and how intriguing. Like at first you're thinking, like I said, of this kind of vulture that it's just clawing to life at whatever the cost to anybody else. but like she has this deep love and fascination of humanity at the same time. And then like at the end of her speeches, it'll kind of like the other one will be there, and he's just kind of is like, yeah, I don't really give a fuck about humanity, to be honest. Like it's just like real taking the air out of her balloon when she does those things. Yeah, Marissa
there's not an
great.
easy way to feel about her either. Like the first time you'll see her, she'll be incredibly like sinister and menacing because you're like, what the fuck is going on there?
The first time you get that, like we'll talk about it in another category. Oh my god! But yeah,
I mean, I feel
you'll
like
be creeped out. You'll think she's weird, and then you'll kind of be like, oh no, she has like a deeper motivation and goal here, and then she'll just fucking murder somebody, and then you're like, oh no, wait, no.
But the thing that when she does murder people and stuff, though, Garrett, to
she
me
does it
the
softly.
line, but to me the line
bury me
between
softly, brother.
What was actually real and what was being filmed, I didn't know where that was for a long time, and David and Mark kind of took the piss out of me a little bit because it took me so long to find the mechanic in the game.
Yeah.
And again, that's another story for another category.
I was talking to Garrett about this last night, though. Is like there were because it was more subtle than you've come to being taught to expect from video games. It's like if people didn't have Rumble on or were playing it on a low volume, you got no context clues that this thing was there hidden under the surface.
I was playing it on a low volume, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
and then Mark told me there was a sinister sound, and I was like, oh,
look, and that's not your fault. That's not the game's fault. I think it's just the way we've come to think about video games is that they will beat you over the fucking head with this shit. And when a game comes along that doesn't, we're just like, what? Anyway, we need to explain to us. We need video packages, is what I'm saying.
Let's get this.
All right. Let me take stab number 3 at this, and this is one that I think I don't think there'll be too much resistance on. I don't think LeBlanc from Norco is sticking around. He's a great grizzled, washed up detective. He's perfect for that story. Such a pulpy, grimy, sort of kind of unpleasant story, and he's kind of an unpleasant character, but he's cool. I thought he was that's a great ensemble cast, because I think I nominated like 4 characters from Norco. I don't think any of them were potential winners. I think the main character, I think the mother, I think LeBlanc and
the Garrett's as a concept.
The Garrett's as a concept, you know. I think they're all really great. I don't think any of them probably win, including LeBlanc. He's fun, but I don't think he wins.
I think the thing with LeBlanc, he personifies a lot of that game in that he's a very slimy character. There's a lot of like griminess to him, but when like, you know, push comes to shove, he also very much cares about, like, you know, on a local community level, he wants to help people out, and he helps you out. And that's kind of Norco to some degree as a whole, where you have these people where you see the one half of it where people are just, you know, trying to survive, trying to do what they can, and then you have the other half of it where on a like a local community level, like, because, you know, the whole story of the game is that you've got like Norco, a real town place in Louisiana that is overrun by this I think it's like an energy company,
right?
And, you know, it's just basically just destroyed like the local habitat, the local environment. And, you know, people are suffering from cancer and other long-term diseases. And there is just that, like, you know, local community spirit to, you know, fuck those guys over in any way that is possible. And LeBlanc is this like detective who knows a bit, he knows, you know, he has a history of your family, he knows you. And at first he's very standoffish, he's basically a cunt, but he gets to a point where he helps you out and he's kind of with you for a period of the game afterwards. And also, I don't know if you was aware of this, Barry, but there is a thing that you can do where when you're in his apartment, for some reason this game allows it, that he has like a makeup kit, and if you press him about it enough, he will wear basically clown makeup for the rest of the game.
I did not know that. Okay.
And he will, like, he's wearing the clown makeup and he will like talk about the fact that he's wearing clown makeup for the rest of the game.
That is so Kojima, by the way. That is the most Kojima-ass thing.
It is. But the weird, the Norco is so odd because you don't, unlike something like, say, Citizen Sleeper, you don't really have a whole lot of input on the story. It's not a choose your own adventure thing. But there's so many weird little things you can see that are not crucial to. There's one
fucking cat, the cat that you can just like.
The cat that you can send it, like you rub it, and the girl in the bookstore is like, "Don't rub the cat," and you keep rubbing it. She's like, "Stop rubbing the cat." And then if you rub it like 5 times, it rockets off into the air, and that's never addressed again for the remainder of the story. So there's also the side quest where you have to get a load of drugs and paraphernalia for the Garretts, and there's like 3 pieces you can get.
The Garrett's kidney.
The Garrett's kidney require all the drugs. They love them, and you have to get 1 to advance, and there's 1 that you can't miss, but there's optional ones. And there's a weird moment where earlier on you can go to the city center and you can get $1 and spend it on a hot dog instead of giving it to a very scary Santa and the living in the city center. When you come back later on the Garrett drug quest, Paw, the really weird character who turns out to be like the antagonist, if you did that, he'll say you didn't give $1 to the Santa, and he spits in your face for like that's a completely missable, bizarre scene. And it's like when you describe that makeup thing to me, it's like, oh, there's all this weird shit that's not like crucial, but that you can miss. Norco is a very weird game, but it's really cool.
It's a game where, like, you know, to use like a wrestling analogy, a lot of the time there's not a clear heel face dynamic with a lot of the characters. Like those shades of gray are there, but then that extends to the world itself. And I guess we'll talk more about that kind of later on in Game of the Year and stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of very, very like a lot of strong characters that I think it's more of a kind of like more than the sum of its parts sort of thing, where this ensemble together makes the experience more than one kind of singular character stands out against the rest.
Garrett, you're next.
I'm gonna keep my Elden Ring hater hat on, Blaidd.
It's so funny that you're turning on Elden
Ring.
You
Welsh hate that it's Blaidd. Yep, it's Blaidd. My goodness.
But he wouldn't even be my top character in Elden Ring. I'd probably throw him in the head.
I nominated him early on. He's cool. He's a big scary dog that's cool to fight with.
And he's Welsh.
He is Welsh.
Well.
Yeah. And he's cool to be able, like, because if you do his little quest line for him, he will help you out in one of the Everjails and stuff
really?
like that. So it's if you do a certain thing for me, you meet him at the ruins and he asks you to get something for him. If you get it before you go to the Elden or the Everjail with the other wolf in it, the one that you get the Bloodhound Fang. He'll come in and just fuck that dude's shit up. Like, and then it's like, and then he kind of just like, you know, pimp nod, walk away. Like he's never cool to be seen again.
Do you want to hear something interesting? Is like in researching for this, I was kind of looking up some clips of Blaidd, and they had the voice actor who plays him reading out people's first tweets who just really, really fancy him. Just like
really love a sexy wolf.
Yeah, and not that I'm a furry or nothing, but I really want to fuck Blaidd. And pretty much all the tweets have that sort of content. So that kind of bumped him up a little bit for me after that. Before I even knew what he was about. He seems pretty cool, but there didn't seem anything outwardly interesting about him.
No, he's a cool. I think it's a character design thing mainly as well. He's very good, but it's funny because I was also reading up about him before this, just as a refresher, and it's just so funny because we're still technically in the early FromSoft life cycle of a game, because like apparently he can be antagonistic towards the player, but like reading his wiki entries, like people haven't quite figured out yet what they've done to agitate him, because it takes years for people to decode From games. So they're like, oh, he keeps fucking me up. I don't know what I did, but like he doesn't like me.
There's actually like a not 0% chance we'll come back last year. Goes, look, guys, we fucked it. Blaidd should have been character of the year. We didn't realize that if you kicked a rock somewhere in Limgrave, it actually unlocks a 10-hour side quest chain with him.
What happens is if you eliminate Iron Fist Alexander from your Game of the Year poll, then he hates
he haunts you.
Cool. So I'm up next, and I just gotta, like, at this point we're talking like everybody's great that's left on the list, but I gotta go with the one I have the least personal experience with, and that's Lemon Mina.
Can't happen. Can't let Lemon Mina go. We can't. All right, let's.
If you would like, Dave, it is at this point where I think people feel very strongly about the other characters, and I will allow the deconstruction of a character that is the bucket go if you would like.
I will take the bucket.
If you guys are willing to,
it's one of my favorite Kings Leon songs. But
I loved the bug, like legitimately the way they used that as a bit and doubled down on it and tripled down on it and quadrupled down. As I said, if it was just they added and a bucket to all the dialogue, I'd be like, that's nice. But they didn't. They added it to every ending, and I think added like 3 other endings, including the one where he builds the bucket destruction device for you to put the bucket into, and he's like, destroy the bucket.
Yeah,
it has become too powerful, and you're like, no, I don't want to destroy the buckets, my friend.
Destroy the bucket.
Thank you, Garrett, for making that for once a quick selection possible.
I think people do have emotional attachments to the rest of the characters, and that is the point. I will let the bucket go.
Oh dear, this is quite a list.
What's funny is we need to eliminate one more. And next up is Mark. And based on the last category, I have a feeling where Mark might go with this.
But the thing is, the thing I probably enjoy the most about Ragnarok is their portrayal of Odin.
And look, you're talking to, like, he's my number 2 on this list because 1, I think it's great. Number 2, playing Odin like a mob boss is a fucking it's a choice. Number 3, Richard Schiff should be in all video games, all media.
It's like he's almost too good for the game. When he's sitting there and he's doing those lines, it's like these lines aren't as good as Richard Schiff. He's too good.
He's so good.
It's like someone was like has no kind of like context for Odin or Norse mythology and just went, you know what, right? What if we did like Odin and then gave him like a nickname like Kneecap Scalone or something, and they just fucking roll with it from
the moment I had. So in terms of the preview for this game, I had no idea Richard Schiff was either in this game nor playing Odin. And as a huge West Wing guy back in the day, I wish I had like a live camera feed of my face when he shows up. Like I became one of those really annoying YouTube reaction people for a few seconds. Like, what the fuck? Like, again, like you say, Garrett, is like, what is he doing in a video game? He is like oceans of this, like. But he's great.
No offense to the kid that plays Atreus, but when they're bouncing off each other, it's like, oh, you poor kid, you have to bounce off Richard Schiff. Oh,
that's the thing though. Like Odin in those moments is so much more charismatic that you're like, I kind of side with Odin on this one, even though he's a scumbag. He's like a cross between Tony Soprano and Lord Baelish from Game of Thrones.
Like his great introduction, where there's like, you know, like there's the thunder still going on in the background. The door pops open. He absorbs the ravens into his forearms. And then, like, instead of a big dramatic, like Shakespearean monologue, he just strolls into the house and says, you know who I am.
You know who I am.
You know, real low register. And yeah, like that's where the mob boss comparison starts to come in. Like he's very measured.
I will say the thing that the issue, and it's not with like his portrayal of the character itself, it's the game feels like, and maybe it's my misconception, but the game feels like it's trying to sort of straddle this line. It's trying to do a Shades of Grey thing with him, where you're not entirely sure, like, is he the bad guy? Maybe he's like good guy, but he's a bit misunderstood. And I feel like it's trying to do that, but the whole time I'm like, no, he's the antagonist. Like, there's not going to be any super antagonist after this. He is the fucking antagonist.
I think he's kind of very clearly gaslighting people at all times, right?
Yeah. There's definitely
the only reason he's likable, Mark, is because it's Richard fucking Schiff, right?
Well, I think it's an interesting thing where it's like I think like far and away he's the best actor remaining in this category. But like so how much of me going Odin is badass is it the actual character of the writing, or is it how much Richard Schiff the person is giving to this?
I do think like the depiction of Odin as that mob boss, as it would be a shame if your knees got broken, wouldn't it? That's a really interesting depiction.
It would be a shame if some oafish son of mine hit you in the fucking chops with a hammer, wouldn't it?
Oh, and how passive aggressive he is to Thor. It's so good. I little shit.
But here's the thing.
When he's on the way out of the hut in that scene that we keep talking about, and like he just very much like without breaking stride leans down very slightly to Thor and says, "Make it quick."
Yeah,
and keeps going. Is just like fucking chilling.
The thing that I love about him is he is threatening and menacing, but when you break it down to it, he's a fucking coward as well.
Of course.
When things start turning against him, like, and he snatches up the dwarf, the freaking name has just completely gone from it, Simri's pal, and you're just like, this is such a shit heel move. It's always the last move of a bad guy in a movie is to just grab someone and hold them up at knife point, just like, don't move or I'll just waste this person. And I love that. because you start off thinking he's like this all powerful, and every portrayal of Odin is always all powerful, uncompromising, but he's not. He's like this Machiavellian little tosser who's like trying to win Atreus over for the whole game. And at first you think he's menacing, but you realize he's a fucking little coward, little dickhead. And
he's a shit weasel.
He's a proper shit weasel, a shift weasel, if you will.
There you go.
And it just is. I wasn't expecting it, and I think that's why I love it so much. I think this, to me, is the one thing about this game that is purely 10 out of 10, is this angle on Odin, this portrayal, and this delivery from Richard Schiff. And like, this is the one category I think that I really, well, there's maybe another one that I go close to stand on the table, but I'm like, this feels like this has to be a top 2 character here because it's so good.
With that passion you have faced, Mark, how do you feel?
Well, here's the thing, right? Lemon Mina is my number 1, and I guess at some point we will talk about that. I feel like I'm the outlier here, where I don't have as much of a vibe about the Marissa Marcel. It's more, I have an appreciation for it more than I actually really liked it or cared about it.
I'm the same as you on that.
If I was to pick of these 3, I would go Marcel, but I also understand that there's obviously going to be pushback against that.
Yeah, so this is my standard, like, again, like character of the year and story of the year.
So I think what is probably best here is me and Barry talk about Lemon Mina, and then we can just go for a vote at that point on these last 3.
Okay. Can I present to you the bucket?
The unifying that is the bucket.
Imagine we just pick none of these 3.
Can I talk to you about?
Sorry, so what you're saying is you're getting rid of Lemon Mina, and we're going to vote on the other 2.
Not a fucking chance. No,
because usually we'll do our sales pitch on it.
But
we'll do our sales pitch on it.
I don't think we're going to get down to 2 though with this.
Okay.
But I think depending, I don't know exactly where Barry sits with Lemon Mina.
In a chair.
But for me, it's like number 1 with a bullet.
In a bucket.
I'm number 1 on Lemon Mina as well. And the funny thing is, as someone who's very neutral / cold on God of War and also hasn't finished it, in the limited stuff I've seen of Odin and also the cases the people who finished it have made for it, I'm kind of more Odin than Marissa and Marcel. And I finished and loved Immortality. Anyway, let's talk about Lemon Mina, Mark, because I think that's okay. That's we've the uphill battle here as the
So Citizen Sleeper has a number of actually, like, kind of like Norco. Citizen Sleeper has like a plethora of really interesting NPCs. But they're kind of more black and white for the most part, more so than Norco. And so Lemon Mina, they're 2 characters that you meet at a point. And if you see that through to the end, they're one of the endings that you can get, because Citizen Sleeper has multiple endings. Lem is this kind of like hardworking laborer, very like protective, loving father. And Mina is an adopted child that he found, who she was on, I think she was on some she was a survivor of like some really bad accident on a ship where she was locked in like an airtight weapons case by her parents, and she was the only survivor. So he basically, he works day and night to protect her. Like, you can see it in him. He's a really kind of physically strong individual, but he's also just run ragged because capitalism. Yay. You, as your character, as a robot, this sleeper, you interact them or encounter them early on. And Mina is obviously, she's very shy. She, really only interacts with her adopted father. But over the course of the game, there are little kind of interactions you can have. You can babysit her while Lem goes off to work. And you kind of feel that bonding of these characters get closer and closer. There are like different options you can take in certain parts, but like the kind of like good ending, if you want to call it that, I guess. So the whole game takes place on this kind of giant ship, kind of container, if you will, that's just floating around in space, and it's like its own kind of ecosystem. But there is a way that there's a ship that's going off, like, it's going to travel for like 40, 50 years to basically this kind of new unexplored land that is, a planet that is a new chance at life for people that are stuck on the ship, that are just kind of, being grinded to the bone through, again, capitalism. Yay. And you help these two characters out through, different things, trials and tribulations. And you get to the point, if you choose the good ending, where just before you get on the ship, first of all, Mina, she like goes to you and asks you like, hey, are we a family now? And like that moment like kind of grabs you, this adorable child asking that question to you and you're a robot. And then the ending of the game basically says, it kind of details like what is going to happen before you take that step onto the ship, and explains that, over the course of the next like 10-20 years, because you're an android that has like, taken on the memories of someone who has basically decided to, I can't remember the exact specifics of that. Barry probably explained that better.
Thematically, it's kind of like, I don't know if anyone watched Severance, that show this year. It's doing a similar thematic thing where
it's a great show, by the way.
Phenomenal show. It's great. It's a similar thing. Basically, you are someone put their consciousness in a robot that then does all the laboring, and that person, who knows what they do, they go off and they live their life. And so you are just this kind of stateless, identityless thing, for lack of a better term, that has humanity because it's got a personality put in it, but all it does is exist to work. And so like the opening act of the game before you meet Lem and Mina is very cold, very harsh. You've got a ticking clock on your health. You've got no money. Every character you meet, even the ones that are kind of helping you out, are like begrudgingly.
I mean, everyone's out for themselves. To some
everyone's
degree.
It's like a lot of media this year. This is going harsh on the fucking man. We're on the road to hell with capitalism, buddy. We're going to get to the stage where it is just working and sleeping. That's it, and that's this game. And the point where you meet Lem and Mina, that is kind of the first. The second half of that game, like Mark was saying, there's actually quite a diverse cast. You meet loads of people, and there's a real sense of community about it, and it's great. Lem and Mina are the first step of that. They're the first characters you meet where you have like actual nice interactions with it, which is not only cool for the arc of the story, but also your character, like I said, it's just a fucking robot that exists, even on this derelict ship thing that this society is operating on, where it's all crime and misery. You are still the lowest rung on the ladder, but Lem and Mina still interact with you effectively as a quote-unquote normal person.
It's where you first get that sense of optimism and warmth that the game is introducing.
The game is kind of overbearing early on. Like it's pretty fucking miserable early on, but it's like it is like making you earn that sense of hope and realizing that, hey, there is something there. And before you even get to this final act Mark is describing, where it's kind of like, okay, you get to this ship and there's a chance to get off and they're going to go colonize New World. There's kind of a red herring early on where you meet Lem and Mina and you become friends and you're babysitting, you're getting friends. And there's basically a frigate where you can work on it in the hope that you'll be entered into a lottery to board that one and leave on that one. And that, spoilers, that act kind of culminates in you go there and it's a horrible rigged situation where basically a bunch of like corporate like pigs are basically pre-selected in the lottery to go, and Mina's all distressed and you're trying to calm them down and you're like realizing / in denial that all those hours you worked in a game where you are choosing like, okay, you have a limited amount of time, money and health. What do you want to put your energy and resources in? And you put time and money into this arc because you think this is going to save you. And the characters are all distressed because they're realizing / in denial that it was a farce. So you've already gone through that falsehood one time. And Lem, who's quite optimistic and he tries to stay positive for his very charming, sweet, naive daughter, you see his character go through a little bit of a break and he starts to realize, like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. It all builds and builds and builds and crescendos to this ending Mark is talking about now. And Mark, if you want to take it back there on
and like just to carry on with that bit there as well, what from the bit you mentioned that I forgot till the end, what I think the game does a really effective job with these characters, specifically with Mina, is it's like it's the most I guess I've ever gone into like parent mode outside of having my cat and saving its life this year. But the things that it introduced throughout the game, I was like, I'm actively choosing the options here that I think are what are best to help this kid out, because I've just the portrayal of the kid and the way the game like directs itself with that, I'm just like, I want to make sure this kid is safe and is able to get off this fucking hellscape come hell or high water. And you get to the point that you can do that, and basically the game kind of tells you like, all right, you are going to leave the ship, but over the next 10 years, because your body is an android, it only is actually meant to last a certain amount of time before it basically goes into it's not this, it just kind of starts to decay. Basically it goes past its like sell by use or sell by date, whatever. And so the game kind of details how like Mina does her best to try and like save the parts of you that it can. You sort of come in and out of consciousness, and in those moments you like recall these fond memories and these moments in time. Eventually Lem will pass away because, like, you know, it's such a long journey to this like new land, and it has this kind of like real kind of bittersweetness to it, where you're told that basically you're pretty sure you're not going to make it to the end destination, but you know, you're there the whole way with Mina, and she, like, the last thing I think it says is like she puts you onto, you know, your last kind of vital statistics that you can have before, you know, basic permanent shutdown, but you're switched off consciously at that moment. And it's just there's such a kind of tender beauty to how it does all of that. And it's one of the 2 times this year where I had a genuine tear that came out. And I think it's an incredible story arc. And you know, as much as I enjoy Odin as a fucking mob gangster, and the portrayal and the performance of Marissa, I just think that Lemon Mina is by far the best story arc that I experienced this year.
I would echo that, and I was also totally choked up at the end. I think I also had a different ending to you because, again, this is a proper, your decisions will change in the next chapter of the game. So, Mark, did you get the preamble about if you go on this ship, you will also, against your will, because you're a robot, you're going to be a spy on this ship?
Nope, I got a different ending then.
Okay, so basically, I actually didn't get the premonition of the future that you got. I got. Again, I think because of the certain route I took through the story, I ended up owing certain people, and how I got onto the ship basically ended up owing something to a certain faction, you know, and they were basically like, if you get on this ship, you are, whether you like it or not, for the rest of time, you are a spy on our behalf, and it's not about you feeding information back to us. You're a robot, and we can make you do this. And so I actually chose to not go on the ship, because it was like they can go off and colonize this other planet, and they can maybe figure out a life together themselves without me. Because it's the lore of the world and the various chapters along the way before you get there. It's there's a lot of factions and gangs and corpos. You know, it's very cyberpunky in a lot of the traditional ways. It's corporations that are also gangs. Do you know what I mean? That are sniping against each other. There's lots of subterfuge and infiltration and sniping between the different organizations. And so I was just kind of like, like I was saying about the Ethan plotline earlier, it was literally a case of my decision of what kind of ending I wanted was motivated entirely by what I wanted for my character and how I wanted them to relate to these other characters. And I didn't want them to be this kind of potential fly in the ointment, wrench in the machine or wherever, where I'm kind of undermining this potential new colony by being a vessel to spy on them for this other entity. So I ended up not going. So you get this really bittersweet ending where they're kind of, and again, the writing in Citizen Sleeper is so fantastic. It's so effective, and it really cuts to your core. And so you get this thing where you stay and Lem and Mina fly off, and she's looking out at you, but you're like, you know what? They got to go off and start a whole new life. And it was bittersweet, but it was also kind of happy because at that stage of the story, I had met other characters that I was happy to stay with and interact with on the ship. It's fucking great. I mean, it's Citizen Sleeper is really fantastic, and I think Lem and Mina are the heart of it. They are the core of it. And they would be my number one easily, based on the remaining ones, based on the whole list. I think they'd be my number one. And the reason, by the way, we're calling them one is because you always interact with them as a pair. So they are technically. I
was about to ask that extraordinarily pedantic question.
Yes, don't worry.
Let's not get into that hole.
That is a fair. You've got to eliminate one now.
That is a fair question. But they're one icon on the map, and they always interact as a pair. So that's that.
Can they transport water?
Right. We're going to a 3-way
probably in their hands, not very well.
We're going to a 3A poll. That's agreed. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So in the third place of those three, with one vote, it's Lem and Mina.
Right. Whoa. I thought we were going to pick between the three of us first.
No, that's what I said. We were going to pick between.
Wait. What's the tie? So me and Mark are Lem and Mina.
But that's what I said before. I was like,
I said we would discuss Lem and Mina, and then between us, we would vote first.
We have to vote before we go to the poll.
That's what I said before this. I was like, are we going to no? And you said no. We'll go straight.
No, I thought you meant, are we going to narrow it down to two?
I think we just wanted to make sure we got.
That's what I said. Are we going to narrow it down to two and then go to the poll? And you're like, no, because we're not getting rid of Lem and Mina. I'm not getting rid of Marissa Marcel.
But I thought we were going to vote on the three.
That's what I wanted to do, and that's what I asked.
Oh, okay.
We'll vote. We can vote. We will vote on the three. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so it's two
Sorry,
for Lemon Mina.
Something must have got lost in translation there. I apologize.
Yeah, because that's what I was saying. I was like, that's why I was like, we usually go to 2.
Yeah,
you were like, no.
I think it's just because we didn't actually get to talk about Lemon Mina. I think I must have got myself worked into a shoot.
But also, I'm not opposed to going to 2, but also I don't know if we can agree on what the 2 would be. Also, so
just better off voting on 3.
So just so me and Mark we're 2 votes for Lemon Mina. So what are the votes for Odin? Jack and Garrett.
My vote would be Marissa.
Mine would be Marissa as well.
Okay, and so Jack is on Odin.
The power of tiebreak in Jack's hands is too powerful.
The thing is, if I'm going to be really true to myself, I probably would vote for Odin. Yeah. Of the 2, obviously, I'd much rather it's not fair for me to condemn Lemon Mina. I want to go to the polls. Let's Pokemon.
So 2-2-1.
Well, we've already seen a peek behind the wall because of our miscommunication.
Dave blew that reveal, didn't he?
Yeah.
But I feel less bad if I do it. That if the people do it, that's fine.
So with 1 vote, 3rd place is Lemon Mina.
Okay.
Yeah. Bear in mind, both Mark and Barry were able to vote in this poll.
I did not vote in that poll. I do not ever vote in the public poll.
Well,
that
was my vote.
Show a message
no, it wasn't your vote either.
No, it wasn't your vote, Mark.
It wasn't your vote, Mark. It was Niner. Funnily enough, would you like to know who you did vote for?
This game is Citizen Slept On.
Huh.
You voted
well, I fucked myself over there.
You voted for Odin.
Oh, you buffoon, Mark. You buffoon, Mark. God damn.
Embarrassing. All right. Okay. Well,
God, I aligned with a Brit one time.
Yeah,
and this is what it gets
I know,
me. God, fucking damn.
I'm sorry.
You were aligning with the Brit on a game about colonialism as well, Barry. What were you thinking?
I mean, I got only myself to blame.
Hey, I'll be Irish this time next year. All right.
Okay, that's fine.
Damn right. In 2nd place, and this is, I'll tell you what, the poll is doing things in because 2nd place is Marissa Marcel.
I knew this was gonna happen.
With 6 votes. So the person, the character of the 3 who got the least votes from us won the poll. Odin wins with 22% of the poll to Marissa Marcel's 14.5.
Come on, Odin, get in there, my old son.
So what does this mean?
Maybe this is
that means Marissa wins, right?
That means Marissa wins, surely.
What?
No,
well,
how does Marissa win?
Because it was
2-2 on Melissa, and because Odin got voted out, so Melissa wins.
Oh yeah. It was 2.
It was 2 for Marissa. It was 2 for Lemon Mina, and 1 for Odin. So we went to the poll based on the tiebreak between Marissa and Odin.
Wait a minute now. Hang on. Stop the count. Hang on. My understanding of the poll was that the overall winner of the public poll gets 1 vote, and that 1 vote goes to Odin, which means it's a 3-way tie.
It's a 3-way.
Our spiel at the top is that
this is highly contentious.
It's written in black and white at the top of the thing. It says
it might be. Hang on,
if we're in a deadlock, the one that received the highest number of votes from the poll.
We have certainly had options.
We don't wait.
We've had in the past times where whatever we had as
because then we just give the winner to the top of the vote every time.
Yes.
Rather then we're not here for any reason.
This feels.
The tiebreak was between Marissa and Lemon Mina. Odin got voted out before we went to the tiebreak.
I'm with Garrett on this one. It is Marissa.
I have to say, the most we have been going painfully letter of the law here.
There's no other way that makes sense.
At the end of the day, if that's the result, that's the result. We can't sit here until 4 a.m. to debate it. I'm not compelled at all by Marissa as the overall winner. Character of the year.
The thing is, the 5 of us here, the votes were split 2-2-1. So on that basis, Odin is eliminated.
Barry, one of my favorite games of the year, just one most disappointing in the pre.
I guess.
And I really want Odin to win this because I think
Game of the Year is a cruel mistress.
Jack, as always, you have been a couple of times we've done this, the people's champion, where you're pretty much consistent with what the people want, even though me and Garrett have spoiled the party for you here.
I will say, I really want Odin to win, but I have to side with the other 3 on this, Barry. That's so. Is
there no case for anyone else to be swayed? Is everyone locked in? Okay.
Only if you go back to the bucket.
One chance.
And
Barry, you need to understand how difficult it is for me to vote against Richard Schiff. just generally.
Honestly, same with me. Like I like it was pretty close for me between Marissa and Odin. It wasn't like a no contest.
I actually thought
everyone plays Citizen Sleeper. Oh my god!
While you were doing the Citizen Sleeper was when I was like dragging up the poll and stuff like this, and I was just like, oh fuck, because I thought Garrett was going to go with Odin as well, and I was like,
in which Odin would have won. I was technically the swing there, I guess.
Yeah,
okay.
Do you know what? If I played it, because when I went on YouTube and watched a playthrough of it, Barry, it was the ending where you had where you leave Lem and Mina on the ship. Right,
okay,
and that seemed heartbreaking.
It was very, but especially for a game with no acting or anything. It's all text.
To be honest,
incredible.
I think video games as a whole should not have voice acting. Maybe that's just because I played. Maybe it's just because I just played 10 minutes of Sonic.
Mark out here trying to put a whole business out.
No, I'm sorry.
Workers, get out of here.
It's just the 10 minutes of Sonic Frontiers I played this morning, and I was just like, "This is fucking atrocious."
Did Jack screen freeze, or did you just have a stroke when you said that?
I'm sorry. Voice acting. I always would prefer no voice acting over voice acting.
That's the hottest take we're going to get all year.
That is so many people out of work right now. Most people are like voice actors, underappreciated giants in the world, and then Mark is like they're paid nothing, and Mark is just like fuck.
So many things I hate about Final Fantasy VII Remake, and the voice acting is one of the things.
I think what you're ultimately getting mad at is bad voice direction, not voice acting.
I'm now starting to think like when I ducked to grab the wheel for the next category, did I hit my head and bleed out on the floor? And this is all just like
I'm not wrong. Do you know why the bucket is the best character? Because it doesn't have a fucking voice.
There will not be a spicier take on this whole.
No, that's pretty good.
Oh, I don't know.
Cancel voice acting.
I know a couple of games that are head to head in a couple of other categories.
Now, if it was because you don't want Troy Baker ever to work again, I could maybe get on board with that.
Hang on.
He nearly did that to himself this year with his NFTs. So.
Oh, that's what I mean. Yeah, he's a great voice actor.
Gentlemen,
he seems like.
Shall we move on?
So what? Who won this? Lemon Mina, was it?
No, Marissa Marcel from Immortality is your best character of the year.
That's gaslighting from Barry there.
It's a good game. I like Immortality. I love Immortality. In fact, it's a great game.
Incredible.